with the news at 10.
From ITN News at 10 with John Suchet.
Stuck fast tonight, time runs out for crippled tanker. After bus blast, police uncover London bomb factory. The smear test mistakes and how to stop them. And the blizzards that say winter's not over yet. Good evening. There was yet another defeat tonight in the desperate battle to pull the damaged supertanker Sea Empress off the rocks outside Milford Haven. 2 hours ago, tugs tried to move it and failed. They'll try again in the morning. Time is running out. The tanker's already lost 50,000 tonnes of oil. If that continues, it'll become Britain's worst oil spill. Our Wales reporter James Bays watched tonight's operation.
Tonight, after a desperate attempt to move the Sea Empress failed, the tanker is stuck on the rocks and still leaking. All day, with 12 out of her 17 tanks ruptured, she's continued to spew oil into the water. The Sea Empress has lost at least a third of her cargo. That's 50,000 tonnes of crude oil, threatening wildlife along the Pembrokeshire coast. The salvage teams, faced with today's spring equinox tides, the highest and lowest of the year, decided their only option was to try to move her to a more sheltered position.
The tugs can hold the ship within certain tidal and weather parameters. You cannot fight ultimately against the weather, so they are holding the ship as best possible.
Before tonight's attempt to refloat her, gas was pumped on top of the oil in the ship's tanks to increase buoyancy. The desperate operation to move this tanker is now underway, the last stage in a battle against time and the tides. The tugs slowly pulled the giant tanker through 30 degrees, but then she stopped again, caught once more by the rocks. As the salvage crew left the vessel a short time ago, it became clear that what may have been the last chance to move the tanker before the remaining cargo leaks out has now failed. James Bays, News at 10, St Anne's Head.
Environmentalists prayed it wouldn't happen, but oil has now begun washing up on one of the islands near the tanker, which is home to seals and rare birds. That's added more weight to criticisms about why it has taken so long to control the spill. Our science editor reports from the scene.
The nightmare has finally come true. A massive oil spill from a tanker in one of Britain's most important wildlife areas. The slick is spreading mostly away from the shore, but some reports say oil has already reached the island of Skomer, a nature reserve and breeding ground for thousands upon thousands of seabirds. Its very remoteness makes Skomer Island a haven for seals and for seabirds. It's become a symbol of the wild places left in Britain. But now its isolation is threatened by oil from the Sea Empress. They've relied heavily on spraying chemicals to disperse the oil so natural microbes in the sea can break it down, particularly useful for light crude like the Empress's cargo. But oil has hit some local beaches. The cleanup is painstakingly slow. If the wind changes, and it has been veering in the last few days, the 8-mile slick could affect many more shores. The question is, could it have been avoided? The Sea Empress ran aground last Thursday night. Immediate attempts to salvage her were halted as oil bled from the ship. Tugs hauled the stricken tanker from the rocks the next day, but the weather led to the operation being postponed. Over the weekend, the tanker was refloated twice, but dragged back onto the rocks in gale force winds. Yesterday's attempts were suspended after the tanker again broke free. Lord Gershon, Lawrence McGinty from ITN. What can you say to convince the man in the street that the whole thing hasn't been a foul-up from beginning to end?
People have been putting their lives at risk to make sure that the pollution is minimised. It's extraordinarily difficult. It wasn't realised in the first instance quite what a difficult situation it was.
It certainly has proved to be that. Neither booms nor sprays have kept oil off the beaches, and it looks like getting worse. Lawrence McGinty, News at 10 in West Wales.
Anti-terrorist officers investigating the IRA bus bombing have found what they are calling a significant amount of explosives in raids on addresses in London. Some was found at the dead bomber's flat. Another Irishman who was under armed guard in hospital last night is, police said today, not a suspect. ITN's Terry Lloyd reports.
As the double-decker bus, which was ripped apart in the explosion, was being eased away from the scene, armed detectives were carrying out a series of raids on addresses around London. Special branch officers had identified the man who was killed aboard the coach, and a significant amount of Semtex explosive material and bomb-making equipment was found at his home. The head of the anti-terrorist branch said the breakthrough was significant. It's now thought the man killed by the bomb was 21 years old and used several different names. He was a native of County Wexford in Ireland, but lived in London for 1.5 years. Forensic experts are now examining his flat. Meanwhile, armed police who had been standing guard over one of the bomb blast casualties were ordered to withdraw from St Thomas's Hospital. 33-year-old Brendan Woolhead from Dublin is being treated for serious head and pelvic injuries suffered in the explosion. Scotland Yard does not regard him as a suspect, but tonight his brother voiced his concern about the way he'd been treated.
Very frightened for him. It's uncanny. You don't know what to do. You don't know even know who to turn to. He was just an ordinary guy, and all of a sudden he's a victim of a bombing, and he's got these armed guards around him.
Late tonight, almost without notice, the bombed-out bus, by now wrapped in blue plastic, was driven out of London's Theatreland for closer police scrutiny. Terry Lloyd, News at 10, Central London.
As politicians on both sides of the Irish Sea try to keep the peace process going, the loyalist paramilitaries had their say today about the IRA bus bomb. In talks with the Northern Ireland Secretary, Sir Patrick Mayhew, they said that each IRA attack made it harder for them to stick to their ceasefire. Our Ireland correspondent John Irvine reports from the meeting.
Every night the RUC close off the few roads that link the loyalist Shankill from the Republican Falls. A precaution born of bitter experience, there is now real concern that those dark days may return, for the loyalists have been considering their ceasefire and their representatives say its future is in doubt.
Every time the IRA carries out further action, then it becomes increasingly difficult to hold the line.
The political process goes on despite the IRA. The Prime Minister and the Unionists still favour an election.
We discussed elections, we discussed then how one would proceed after elections in terms of developing the elected body and moving into negotiations.
The British have effectively given up on Sinn Féin. The Irish, it seems, have not. In the Dáil today, Mr Bruton was echoing Sinn Féin's demand for a date to be set for all-party talks.
We will continue to work intensively with the British government, with all the political parties, including Sinn Féin, and with others as appropriate, to achieve that specific date.
Dublin and London can't agree how to deliver peace, but the people of Northern Ireland have again shown that that is what they want. In the last 10 days, nearly half this country's population have called a telephone hotline for peace, or given their signatures for peace, or rallied like today. It's a collective will the IRA have so far ignored. John Irvine, News at 10, Northern Ireland.
The two relatives of Iraq's President Saddam Hussein, who defected 6 months ago, are tonight on their way back to Baghdad. Security was tight at the Jordanian-Iranian checkpoint as Lieutenant General Hussein Kamel Hassan and his brother Saddam Kamel were whisked back into Iraq. They originally went to Jordan to create an opposition power base to overthrow President Saddam, who has now apparently granted them a pardon. It's neck and neck tonight in the race to take on Bill Clinton for the presidency of the United States. Republican voters in New Hampshire haven't given Senator Bob Dole the support he needed to make him the clear front-runner. The latest indicators suggest Senator Dole on 26% is fractionally ahead of Pat Buchanan on 25%. The former Tennessee governor Lamar Alexander isn't far behind on 22%. Our Washington correspondent Bill Neely is in New Hampshire.
We're going to win. That's right. Looking good. The old warrior on his last campaign is willing himself to win.
One more time.
On his third bid for the presidency, Senator Bob Dole is struggling, clutching for the narrowest of victories.
A win is a win is a win, right?
He once said whoever wins here will fight Bill Clinton in November. He's not saying that anymore.
We won't have to win. No, we're going to North Dakota, South Dakota tomorrow, whatever happens, but we'd like to leave with a win.
He is the old lion of the Republican Party. At his heels, the party's hyena. Pat Buchanan is a populist and a nationalist.
I put America first.
And he is tearing strips off Mr. Dole and scaring his own party.
Where's Bob Dole's vision for America? Does anybody here have any idea what he really believes and stands for?
No Republican has ever won the White House without first winning the New Hampshire primary. Buchanan is polling strongly in the state capital.
Pat Buchanan.
I voted for Buchanan.
I voted for Bob Dole.
Lamar Alexander, a former cabinet minister, has reason to laugh. He's just behind the front two. He too hammering Senator Dole.
He's had not one fresh idea to say about where the country's going.
It is in truth a battle for the soul of the Republican Party. Dole, the moderate, the deal maker, the realist.
By voting for Bob Dole in New Hampshire, stand beside her.
The wounded hero, reminding America of the generation that won the Cold War.
I think that was terrific.
Against him, the radical right and the brash Buchanan, scorning the deal, rejecting the past.
No landslide.
Dole's tongue is in his cheek when he talks of a landslide here. It won't be. And his party's heart is in its mouth. A Buchanan win would label them extremists and delight President Clinton. Senator Dole's supporters are tonight preparing a victory party. Any win will do. But this bitter campaign may leave them all losers in the end.
And we go live now to Bill Neely in New Hampshire. Bill, it's not as good for Bob Dole as he wanted. Can he now survive?
Well, if he wins, certainly. If he loses, it would be a serious blow. New Hampshire is, if you like, the Beecher's Brook of the grand national race to the White House. Many will fall here, and Bob Dole has certainly already stumbled going across it. But he will go on because he has money, he has organisation, and he has the backing of the party's hierarchy. But they are worried, and there have to be concerns about his health. Just how long can he keep up this pace for a 72-year-old? There are, after all, 8 months to the election.
But whatever happens, there is no clear front runner there in New Hampshire, which can't be good for the Republican Party.
No, after all, the ultimate goal is to beat Bill Clinton, and it's thought Pat Buchanan is too extreme to unite his party to do that. But really, it's been a disastrous campaign. All the candidates have broken Ronald Reagan's 11th commandment. Don't attack each other, attack the Democrats. President Clinton in Washington tonight must be laughing, because this really truly has been a demolition derby.
Thank you, Bill. Still ahead on News at 10. More snow on the way tonight, plus how Ford explain the disappearing black faces of their workers. Screening out the mistakes, what's being done to ensure smear tests are correctly diagnosed. And what spoiled one little girl's dream night at the Brit Awards.
I felt very sad for the other friends. I was crying as well, though.
Welcome back. In eastern and southern England, they've been digging themselves out of last night's snow, which left some towns cut off and roads dotted with crashed and abandoned cars. There were power cuts in Kent, and 14,000 homes in Lincolnshire lost their electricity too. From Lincolnshire, here's our North of England reporter, Ben McCarthy.
Kent, caught out by the Arctic weather, which left many roads blocked and some areas completely cut off. In Dover, 500 lorries and 200 cars which had arrived from Europe were left stranded when the port became cut off by snow. In Suffolk, 2 men were stuck in their car for 5 hours near Great Yarmouth and had to walk 4 miles to the nearest village for help.
I was coming down this road here last night, and it was just like 3-foot drifts, 3-4-foot drifts. Just stopped us straight away.
Arctic conditions, just couldn't get through at all.
In Lincolnshire, commuters were confronted by snowdrifts several feet deep. Some had to dig their way to work. But here it was the wind which caused the most serious problems, with gusts of up to 60 miles an hour pulling down power lines. At one point, 16,500 homes in Lincolnshire were without electricity. Nikki Baxter and her young family were without power from 9:30 last night. It was 16 hours before the power came back on, so she could finally cook for her children.
When the electric started sort of flashing, we were able to get torches ready, candles ready, and as luck would have it, we got a flask filled.
It's in these very exposed areas that the wind is causing most of the problems. Engineers are working flat out to try and ensure that nobody has to suffer another bitterly cold night without power.
And tonight, East Midlands Electricity said it's confident that all but a handful of homes have now been reconnected. Ben McCarthy, News at 10, Lincolnshire.
And there'll be more snow showers tomorrow in northern and eastern England, North Wales and over the Scottish hills. By Thursday and Friday, things should become a little less cold. A group of workers at Ford's at Dagenham in Essex got the surprise of their lives when they saw a photograph of themselves taken 5 years ago. The photo is being reused to promote Ford's credit options scheme. 4 of the workers, who are black or Asian, found they had become white. They and their union are furious. Hal Jones explains.
The face of Ford on the production line, one of equal opportunity. All the ethnic groups in Ford's workforce were represented in this photograph used in advertising in the early 90s. But when the same picture was used in a new Ford campaign, the black and Asian faces were missing. They'd been carefully replaced by white ones. Ford told the 4 missing workers it had all been a mistake. Each of them received £1,500 in compensation.
If it's good enough for black workers to make the product, it's good enough for black workers to also advertise the product. That's what equality is about.
Ford say the picture was modified for use in Poland, redesigned to reflect the ethnic mix there, but the same artwork was mistakenly used in Britain.
This is a major own goal for Ford. They spent a lot of time and effort 4 or 5 years ago in the original ad to configure the ethnic mix correctly, and now they found that all that work has blown up in their faces.
In a statement, Ford admitted a genuine administrative error. The managing director of Ford Credit said, "I apologise for any offence the brochure might have caused employees and customers, and we have taken steps to ensure it does not happen again." This has been an expensive episode for Ford in terms of negative publicity, and from now on, everything they do will be driven by a little more care. Howell Jones, News at 10, Central London.
The Prime Minister and the Labour leader Tony Blair clashed on the Scott report today for the first time since it was published. Tony Blair said that unless the Prime Minister properly answered the criticisms made in the report, the government would remain knee-deep in dishonour. Replying to Mr Blair, the Prime Minister said the Labour leader was huffing and puffing with false indignation. The government's controversial care in the community approach to treating mentally ill people is to be revised. The Health Secretary, Stephen Dorrell, said care in the community shouldn't mean the end of residential care, and announced a new scheme including more residential, hospital and day care. Bette Gilroy's loyalty to Coronation Street earned her a royal appointment today, as the actress Julie Goodyear received an MBE at Buckingham Palace. And Julie, who left the soap last year, made a new friend for the day, Vi Chater, a lollipop lady from Luton. A series of highly publicised mistakes by hospitals and laboratories has meant extra anxiety for women waiting for the results of cervical cancer screenings. As the government announced an increase in screenings, News at 10 examines why mistakes are made and how they could be prevented. ITN's Richard Lindley has tonight's special report.
You mustn't mistake those for abnormality.
A training session at Sheffield's Northern General Hospital. These are the people who will have to decide whether a woman's smear test shows cell changes that could lead to cancer. It's not simple.
The difficulty is deciding that what I see is the same as what you see, because it is so subjective.
Does this mean lots of women are being told they're all right when they're not, that they're getting what's called a false negative result?
No, I'm saying we expect a false negative.